Hey guys, Kurt Hughes here with Ignite Baseball. Talking about the cross step today. It's something that I think us as hitting instructors we really can't ignore because a lot of really elite players are doing it now. So I thought I'd address it, talk about how it can be good, how it can be bad, and we'll just go from there. So one of the notable cross steppers in the game right now is Giancarlo Stanton. So we'll just kind of talk about his process, some of the reasons that it works really well for him, some of the other reasons that it doesn't work as well for some other guys. So Stanton, one of his problems before in his swing, before he started cross stepping, he really started doing it a lot more towards the end of the season when he got in his big home run spree, was that he wasn't getting his barrel in the way of the ball as deep. So think about the orientation of his feet versus the orientation of the lines in the batter's box. So you can see how angular he's stepping here, right? So right there, right? That's how it kind of lines up toe to toe. So what that does is allows his back shoulder to be further away from the strike zone. So here's his back shoulder, right? So if you measured the distance from like his back shoulder to where the barrel could like cross the plate, which would be like right here. I have no ability to actually measure that from this angle, but that distance is further away than someone that steps more square, and we'll kind of examine that in just a second. But what you'll see is because that shoulder is further away, his barrel turn behind him doesn't have to be as tight. So you'll see as he gets kind of started, he really lays that barrel out for a decent period of time in the beginning of his swing, and he doesn't turn it right away. Usually when I'm looking at a swing, the thing that I'm looking for is when a hitter gets to about half turn, which he's almost at half turn here, I want the barrel to be pretty much parallel. And the reason that I want the barrel to be parallel is because I need the bat to be covering the plate for a long time. So if you're looking at it from like an overhead view, if the barrel isn't covering the plate, then what ends up happening is you're not able to hit the ball, right? So if he were stepping straight, then what would happen is this layout of his barrel would allow him or would force him to kind of come out of the zone a lot quicker than he wants to. But because he steps across like this, when his barrel crosses the plate, he's still getting that speed in kind of a horizontal direction. So when he starts getting barrel speed, it's going horizontally, and then it crosses the plate, and because of the orientation of his feet, he's able to hold his barrel on the plate for a really long time. Now, this is something that you can do as well while stepping straight or even a little open. It's not easily done, but it's done. There's a lot of major league hitters that do it, and we're going to examine those in just a second. But I wanted to kind of address how some of these guys do it. So the other thing that I think is really interesting about the swing is his ability to check swing is greatly increased because in the early stages of the swing, he doesn't have a lot of barrel speed yet until he gets about right here. So he doesn't have to fully commit to his swing, doesn't have to fully commit to his swing, doesn't have to fully commit to his swing until he gets about right here. And then his barrel starts going fast enough where he can't stop it. Guys that turn their barrel really, really deep, although they can wait longer than Stanton to begin their swing, once they start, it's harder for them to stop. So it's really a catch-22. So you have to make a decision on what's more important to you. Is it more important to have to start your swing earlier with the ability to check swing, or do you want the ability to start your swing as late as possible with less ability to check swing? I prefer the ability to start your swing later with less ability to check swing because it takes it takes your gamble out of it. So there's these things that pitchers use a lot. They're called pitch tunnels, and basically what they are, I can send like a link or whatever explaining that if you guys want to. So ask me a question about that. I'm happy to post it. But pitch tunnels basically, so this is Aroldis Chapman that Altuve is seeing. Pitch tunnels basically is like, okay, this is a fastball. It's a 100-mile-an-hour fastball, right? And it looks exactly the same until about this point. And if this were Chapman's slider, what that pitch would do at about this point, or maybe a little bit further, maybe like right here, would be come like this, right? But up until this point, the pitch looks exactly the same. So if you don't turn your barrel really, really early and you have to start early, but you kind of have that ability to check swing, what ends up happening, in my opinion, is that you start committing to a pitch, and then the pitch doesn't actually end up in that spot that you expect it to. So I would rather hitters be able to check swing less, but be able to start their barrel quicker, so that way when they actually do make that decision to swing, they can wait as long as possible so the pitch is out of the tunnel and you know what it is when you make that decision. Now, obviously, that's not always true. Pitchers are really, really good. Obviously, the highest level pitchers get paid too, and they are going to fool you sometimes and you're going to strike out. That's just part of the game. But it's really important to understand the distinction. What we see with a lot of guys that turn the barrel really, really well behind them and really, really tight is that their front foot is really what starts their barrel. So when we see Altuve here, if you look at the relationship between his front foot when his heel hits, sorry, wrong tool, his front foot when his heel hits and his barrel up above his shoulder, you'll see his barrel is already going really before that heel hits. Ideally, we want our heel and our front leg really to control that barrel if you were going to be doing the swing pattern where you can decide the latest, but it would be harder to check swing. Whereas with Altuve, what we kind of see is that he doesn't really turn the barrel as tight behind him, but because he steps across like this, he's able to get really, really nice barrel coverage, plate coverage without really turning the barrel really tightly behind him. So it's kind of like, if you have a cross step, you don't really need to turn the barrel as well. If you don't have a cross step, you have to turn the barrel really well. So there's kind of pros and cons to both, and a solution if you're not a great barrel turner, and I'll show you what great barrel turn means in just a second. But if you don't have great barrel turn, it may be a good idea to cross step. Now, there are definitely some swings that I've seen of Altuve where he turns the barrel really, really well. These ones that we're looking at here, and really most of the swings that he was taking during the playoffs, were not examples where he turned the barrel really, really well. So is he getting his barrel deep on the ball? Yeah. But when does his turn of his barrel actually begin? And when I say the turn, I mean when the area that you're actually going to hit the ball, which is this area right here, like this part on the bat, right where the logo is. If we kind of take a look at that, I'll zoom in. There you go, cool. And then right where the logo is right there, when does that logo begin facing the ball? When you can actually begin to hit it. And because this pitch is way out in front, his is delayed even more. But the answer for Altuve is that the logo doesn't start really facing until right about here when the bat's kind of behind his back. And then he has it in the way a long time. But if he were stepping open or a little bit straighter, by him delaying his barrel turn for this long, he wouldn't be able to hold the barrel over the plate as long as he does, and he wouldn't be able to hit this pitch. His hands would just kind of come this way and come off it, which is the argument a lot of coaches make for not stepping open. So you can kind of see an example of that here. So you can see as he steps in, right, you can see him pull his hands really, really violently across his chest, which if you use an open stepper, that would make his barrel come way, way out of the zone really, really fast. But he's not an open stepper. He's a closed stepper. So when he pulls his hands violently across his chest, it really just directs his barrel to stay in the zone and kind of stay on that inside pitch even further. So that's kind of the distinction between, what someone that's an open stepper and someone that's a closed stepper might do. So this is another view of that one that he hits way out in front that we were just looking at just a second ago. And this is a better angle of being able to see when that logo comes into play and could actually hit the ball. So right here, Altuve's bat's not actually in the way because you got to imagine the ball is a little bit, further away from him than that. So right here, his barrel's pointing right back at the catcher. If I could zoom out a little bit, it's not really letting me. But his barrel is pointing right back at the catcher. When your barrel is pointing at the catcher, it's not in the way of the ball. So he's starting to get his barrel speed right about here as he's entering the zone, which is what, like that's fine. That's kind of like what we're looking for. But at the end of the day, it's important to recognize that a lot of other really, really elite hitters, they get their barrel speed right away, like behind their shoulder. So here's a couple comparisons. Okay, so this is Donaldson, and you'll notice the difference right away here. Okay, so Donaldson, you'll see that barrel speed happen instantly, and that turn happen right back behind that glove, and the blur happening right away. Now, obviously, the camera quality is a factor here as well. But what you'll see with him is that all of that turn happens behind him, and he has to do that because he steps open. Because if he didn't turn it early when he steps open, his barrel wouldn't be over the plate in these couple frames, which would limit his ability to actually make contact with the ball. But because Altuve and Stanton and Kris Bryant sometimes step across, they don't have to have as good barrel turn, and they can still get their barrel over the plate. So definitely some things to consider. What I would say, you can kind of see this is really good barrel turn as well. This is JD Martinez. He tends to be a little bit of a cross-stepper sometimes, but I wanted to use this video because it's a great example of getting barrel speed right away. So you can kind of see how the hands work like a hinge, and the bat kind of flies into the zone like a door in really, really deep in front of the catcher's glove. So that's an example of what we're looking for in turn. And you'll see that like in this frame right here, this is similar to the one I was just talking about with Altuve. His barrel is pointed right back at the catcher's glove, and it's not in the way of the pitch, but it is here. So the longer that your barrel is in between the catcher's glove and the ball, the greater success rate you're going to have, just because of the probability of you actually hitting it. So with a guy like JD or a guy like JD, they're both JDs, right? Josh Donaldson and JD Martinez, they really do a great job of turning the barrel deep. And here's another guy who does a great job of turning the barrel deep. This is Chris Davis, and you'll see how drastically open he lands, and you'll see all the speed that he gets right away, right back behind him as his bat's entering the zone. And with cross steppers, they don't need to get this speed so early because the angle of their body. But a guy like Chris Davis, because he starts his barrel speed so fast behind him and so early in his movement progression, what ends up happening with a guy like him is that he can't really stop his barrel once he gets going. So for you as a hitter, it's your decision about, and you can see that barrel speed right behind him here as well. So as a hitter, it's your decision. Do you want to be able to check swing better, or do you want to be able to decide to start your swing later? Usually my default until now has been I want you to be able to decide to start your swing later. But now with all the evidence that's kind of piling up with these guys, I'm not sure what the right call is. But it seems like both options work really well. And usually my objection to guys stepping across was that, well, big guys can do that, but small guys can't. Jose Altuve is the smallest guy in the bigs, and he's able to do this really well. So the thing that I think is interesting as well is the directionality of the hips and how that pulls the shoulders. So I'm going to do this one pretty briefly, but when you step across, you're moving your leg into landing. I'm going to go back to another video. This one right here. So I want you to watch his hips. So as he's landing, okay, you're going to see his hip move right at us almost immediately. So watch his heel come down, and then boom, it kind of pops back at us and kind of to an angle. Guys that land open, their hip pops straight back. So it's really just about what directionality you're trying to make your hips go, and you're trying to make the back part of your pelvis kind of fly at, because the back part of your pelvis is kind of like what controls the directionality of where your barrel is and where your barrel is going to go. So if you make your hip pop back immediately, then your hip is going to go forward. Your back hip is going to go forward. Let me show another video of that so you can kind of see what I mean. So this is another one. You'll see that Altuve's hip kind of goes in that same direction, kind of to the side first. So he has sideways velocity of his hips first before they become fully rotational. But with guys that land open, like Josh Donaldson, you'll see him, he gets here, the sideways velocity of his hip is kind of slower as he's landing. You can see right here, right? And then you'll see that his back hip or his front hip kind of moves backwards and his front hip moves forward, kind of like this. So this is the model that I've been teaching up until now. But it looks pretty clear that the other model can work as well. So it's important anytime that you find new information that you put it to the forefront, test it, see if it works, and see if it's something that wants to be part of the model. And really, you know, we spend all this time as hitting coaches trying to come up with the best swing model and the best swing. And as long as hitters are able to be successful and really like max out what their body can give them as far as distance is concerned, then it's not the end of the world whether a hitter moves one way or another way. But what it is important to understand is matching. Like when you have a swing where you land open and the first move of your front and back hip are, you know, away from the pitcher and towards the pitcher, like Donaldson, like I said here, like right, so his front hip's moving away from the pitcher, his back hip's moving towards the pitcher, you have to have a really, really tight barrel turn so you can kind of get started having things going in the correct direction and make sure that you get your bat over the plate. But if you're like Altuve in this video here, and the first direction of your hips moving is perpendicular to the pitcher in both directions, then I'm not sure that your barrel turn has to be as good. So it really just depends on what swing you're going to do, and if you can generate a bunch of force cross-stepping, then go for it. I don't think it's an issue. And I also feel like when you cross-step, it creates a little bit more space for you to hit these inside pitches. Whereas, you know, if you're standing right on the plate, then a lot of times the fear of the ball possibly hitting you can interfere with your ability to really go after pitches. So those are my thoughts. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a text. My number's down below, so is my email. Hope to talk to you soon.